Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode of Money and Medicine. Today I want to talk to you about something that most professionals avoid thinking about, and that's life cover. Not because life cover is complicated and not because life cover is unnecessary, but because we meet many medical professionals with existing financial portfolios in place who have absolutely no idea or clarity why they've got life cover included in their portfolio and why they are paying for a specific amount of life cover. Now, I've been in this industry for more than a decade and I've had the opportunity to work with hundreds of medical professionals over the years. And every time I meet with someone new that is not one of our clients, my favorite question to ask that person is, why do you have 1 million or 3 million or in some instances even 10 million rand of life cover in place? And the reality is that 90% of the people that I meet for the first time who have reached out to us respond to me by saying that the reason they've got 1 million in place, as an example, is because it sounded fine, or it sounded enough, or even in some instances, it was recommended to them by an advisor. Other people respond by saying that I've got 3 million rand of life cover because I chatted to one of my colleagues and we are in the same stage of our life and they've got 3 million rand of life cover. So I should also probably have 3 million rand. Now, that's the absolute wrong way to consider or even quantify life cover. So let's unpack the purpose of life cover. What is life cover and why do we need it? The purpose of life cover is very, very simple. Life cover creates an immediate pool of capital that will pay out to your dependents if you pass away. In the simplest way of putting it, life cover replaces the financial value that you would have created over your lifetime, to provide for those loved ones or to settle any debt as financial security. It's very important to understand that life cover is not for you. In fact, I've never come across anyone that personally benefited from life cover while they were alive. You will never benefit from life cover directly while you are still on this earth breathing. Life cover, the purpose and intent behind life cover is for your spouse, your children. For many people, it could also be for their parents, if your parents are financially dependent on you. In some instances, it could also be to the benefit of a business partner. So if you are a medical professional that co-own a practice, you might need life cover to protect your share in that practice. It could also be to anyone else, any other person, which is maybe not a relative, but are financially dependent on you, which you are providing for to make provision for them. If nobody depends on your income, you may not need life cover. But if someone does, you probably do. Now the question is, how do you know if you need life cover? So irrespective of the couple of questions that we've just highlighted, how do you know if you really need life cover? Now there's 3 questions that is very important. And if you answer yes to any of these questions, the reality exists that you probably need life cover. The first question is, does someone rely on my income to survive? Do I have debt that I need to settle in the event of my death? For instance, a property, a car, a personal loan, and I'll go a little bit deeper into this in a short while. The third question is, do I have long-term responsibilities like children's education that I need to provide for? If the answer to any of those are yes, there is a definite reality that you need life cover in your portfolio. Now, the next question is, how do you calculate and quantify how much life cover you actually need? In doing that, there's 2 very important components that we're going to discuss now. And this is where most people get confused. The 2 components that you need to consider when quantifying life cover are, the first one is a capital need, and the second one is what we call an income need. They are not the same thing. If we pause on a capital need, and let's unpack a capital need first. A capital need is a once-off amount that must be settled immediately at your death. Examples of a capital need would be an outstanding bond on your property. So you've got a property that you live in with your family, or if you're not married with no kids, nobody else, you went to the bank, you bought a property for 2 million, you owe the bank that 2 million. If you pass away, you need to settle that. If you've got a car that you bought, you have to repay that car. If you still owe money to the bank, you need life cover to settle that car. If you have a personal loan or credit cards, or in some instances, if you've got a very big estate, you need certain provision for taxes, estate duty, capital gains taxes, which we're going to unpack. But essentially where we are at is what you do is you take a piece of paper, you write down all of your capital needs, all the debt that you have in your portfolio. You go and sit down and say, I've got a property. I bought this property for 2 million. I still owe the bank 2 million rand on this property. Write down, I've got a capital need of 2 million. You then go and say, listen, I drive a car. This car is not fully paid off. I still owe the bank 150,000 rand on this car. I've got a personal loan. I took a personal loan out when I started working. I still need to repay this personal loan. List that as a capital need. Maybe you've got a credit card. Write that amount down as well. All of those kind of things adds up at capital needs. For the purposes of today's video, I'm going to keep it simple. I'm not going to go into taxes. We will have a specific episode dedicated to the tax liability when it comes to a deceased estate and how life cover could be used to fund the tax liability that you might have in your estate. But for the purpose of today, I'm only going to focus on the bare basics of a capital need. Once we've got a good understanding of what a capital need is, like the examples I've used now, we can then go over to an income need. But before I go over to an income need, I just want to emphasize again the importance of this capital need. And as recent as a month ago, I had a meeting with a client and we actually attended a property investment conference. And in that conference, they spoke and they said that it's always a good idea if you can find a nice property in an auction because you can pick it up for a really good price. And if you turn that property over, that might be a good investment. And we had a conversation about auctions. And I said to that person that, you know what, every property on an auction, whatever the reason might be, has got a sad story behind it. So one of two things might have happened. Firstly, it might have been someone that bought that property, they lived in there with their family, they didn't make financial provision through a capital need to settle that property if they pass away. For instance, if you bought a property for 2 million, you didn't take out life cover to settle that property. If you bequeath that property to someone, for instance, at your death, if that property transfers to a specific family member and they can't pay that property, the bank will come and they'll take that property back, and that's how a property would end up in an auction, and that's how people end up on the street. So it's very, very sad, but the reality is it emphasizes the importance of settling that property. The alternative thing is why a property could be on an auction is if someone got into financial distress, they couldn't pay the property anymore, they had more expenses than income, and they were declared insolvent and the bank actually took it away. But for the purpose of today, we are focusing on a capital need and the importance of making provision to avoid that a bank would take back an asset which you've worked very hard for and then your family is left on the street. This now brings me to the second component of quantifying life cover, being an income need. An income need is substantially different from a capital need. This is an ongoing monthly income your family would need to live. As an example, let's say you earn R1 million a year and you are contributing 50,000 Rand a month towards your household. This means that your household requires 50,000 Rand per month in the event of your death to continue their standard of living. If you pass away, your income will stop. There's no money, there's no 50,000 Rand that will continue going to your family. However, with life cover, you can make a provision that is enough of an income that could be paid to your family to help to maintain that standard of living. Now, the simplest way to quantify an income need, and for the sake of this example, is if you contribute 50,000 Rand a month towards your household, that will equate to 600,000 Rand a year. And if you need to do that for 10 years, it will be 6 million. In 20 years, it will be 12 million. Okay. That's an income need. It's as simple as that. You look at your financial responsibility towards someone and then ask yourself the question for how many years you want to do it. If you then quantify the total amount of life cover that you would need, you will take the capital need, which we've discussed, and you'll take the income need, okay? You add those together, and that will give you a total life cover need. Now, in a lot of instances, you can reduce the amount once you've identified the quantum. You can look at existing investments. You can look at existing life cover that you already have in place to make sure that you don't overinsure yourself. But that's the simplest way of quantifying life cover. Now that we've quantified life cover, I'll quickly want to also speak about structure, because structure is something that a lot of people get wrong that could cost them a lot of money. Once you've identified your need for life cover, okay, you need to make sure that you invest in the right structure. And there are typically two structures. It doesn't matter with who you work. It doesn't matter if you work with someone from Money Medicine or if you work with any other advisor. With all insurance companies in South Africa, they have got two structures that you could choose from when it comes to life cover. The one structure is called a term life cover product, and the other structure is called a whole of life cover product. Now, what is the difference between a term life cover and a whole of life cover product? A term life cover product is temporary. For instance, it's normally used when you take out life cover to protect outstanding debt, like a bond on your property, money you owe on your car, or a personal loan, or in some instances, if you make financial provision for a kid's education. So you could choose whether you want a life cover to expire after 10, 20, 15 years, or when your kids go to varsity. The reason why we normally recommend a term life cover product for debt is because it's cheaper. You don't need that life cover forever. At some stage, you're going to settle the property. At some stage, you're going to pay off the car. At some stage, your kids are going to go to varsity and you don't need to make financial provision for their financial well-being anymore. So that's very important to make sure and assess what's the purpose you're taking this life cover for? Why are you covering it? And what's the term that you want provided for? On that note, it's very important to sit every single year and reassess your cover and reduce the sum assured as the term reduces. Whole of life cover on the other side has got no expiry age. Okay, you will continue having that product in place and it will continue to pay out no matter how old you are or when you're going to get a benefit. If you have that benefit and you are fortunate to live until the age of 90, 95 and even 100, that benefit will continue to exist and it will pay out at your death. Because of the term being whole of life, it becomes more expensive. Now, we normally recommend a whole of life product for things like financial provision, estate planning for taxes, guaranteed legacies for your family, business succession planning, things that are not temporary, which is definitely going to be a guarantee at the event of your death. So, most young professionals start with term life cover. If you are at an early stage of your career, it doesn't even matter if you're in an early stage of your career, take a piece of paper, draw a line in the middle. On the one side, write capital need. On the other side, write an income need. Write what financial responsibilities you have in terms of debt. Make sure and list every one of them and say, how long do I have until this property is being paid off? Many years have I financed this property on a bond? How many years do I have left of paying off this car? How old is my kids? And how many years do I need to make financial provision for them? Then on the income side, you do exactly the same calculation. And then you write a term to that. And then you distinguish, in terms of your life cover portfolio, what portion of your life cover need should be a term life benefit and what portion of your life cover should be a whole life benefit. So those are the two structures. But apart from structure, there are certain components which is also very important to include in your benefit. And I want to put a little bit of emphasis and pause on one of those benefits. And that's called an immediate needs benefit. Now, many life insurance companies in South Africa do offer these added on features to your life cover, such as an immediate needs benefit, also commonly referred to as a funeral cover. It's important that you do have that in place on your life cover benefit. And the reason why I recommend it is, for those of you that's been in the fortunate position that have never lost a loved one or has never been personally involved in winding up a deceased estate, the winding up of deceased estates takes months, even years. And the reality is that if the benefit is not structured correctly, there's no provision for an immediate needs benefit. The life cover could in many instances be tied up in the estate, okay? And you couldn't have access to that money for a prolonged period of time. What an immediate needs benefit does is it allows you access to funds within a couple of hours after a valid death certificate has been submitted. Now, this might sound almost simple to you, as if it should be that way, but in reality it isn't. You should structure your benefit in that way. Because in the event of a death of a loved one, or if you even pass away, you don't want to place a financial burden on your family. You don't want you to have your family left without any cash or cash flow. They're already suffering and dealing with the emotional side of this. You don't want to let them deal with the financial stress that comes with it. So make sure that you've got an immediate needs benefit included in there that will pay out within a couple of hours in terms of that. So ladies and gentlemen, life cover is not static. It must evolve with your life. In closing this episode, I want to emphasize, life cover is not about fear. It's about responsibility. It's about making sure that if something happens to you, your family does not suffer financially, while they are already suffering emotionally. The question is not, do I want life cover? The question is, if I died tomorrow, would my financial plan survive without me? If the answer is no, you have work to do. If you'd like us to help calculating and quantifying your life cover, you are more than welcome to reach out to us. Send us an email at info@moneymedicine.co.za, and one of our specialists could sit down with you and help you quantify life cover correctly. Let's do this correctly, because when it comes to protecting your family, guesswork is not a strategy. Until next time, plan a plan.